And greetings, happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here. Not live. We're not live today. 5 of you show up in my Facebook Messenger and torment my precious wife when you find out the show is not live. Okay? And I am a liar, a betrayer, a deceiver. I'm not even making this up. Okay? So we're not live today. I'm on my way to Ann Arbor for my annual Michigan football weekend getaway. Nevertheless, we have a new episode of the Steve Deace Show coming your way with myself, Todd Erzin. He's not live either, maybe alive. Aaron McIntyre as well. We'll be joined by our good friend and colleague, Rob Eno, here in a moment for the Deace Group. Next hour, it is Feedback Friday. We are brought to you by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. In these taped and unprecedented times.
Dang.
Indeed. You still need a real estate agent that you can trust, and you'll find them where the name says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com. I know what you're thinking, right? I mean, if they're going to try to screw us on this election by cutting interest rates and faking a booming economy to get Kamala across the finish line, I might as well take advantage of it myself. If that's you, make sure you've got an agent you can trust to wade through this process because this remains one of the more challenging real estate markets in American history. A lot of times this agent will come from right here in the audience. A lot of times they're Blaze fans just like you. But before we recommend them to you, we have vetted their track record of success. And then once it's verified, that's then how we recommend them to you. So whether you need to get across town or across the country, don't go anywhere until you go first to realestateagentsitrust.com. And with that, it is time for the Deace Group. Your weekly look at the week that was begins, as it always does, with issue 1, Bleep, Lord Nefarious Says.
As a child of God, I can certainly appreciate the lyrical beauty of this text, as well as the descriptions in Jeremiah and Job of their certain knowledge that God was with them in the womb. I too feel that I am known by God in these ways. As a woman who has borne 2 children, I can affirm that I felt something sacred happening in my gestating body during those pregnancies. I can also attest that I felt God's presence with me as I made the decision to end 2 pregnancies. And I felt no guilt, no shame, no sin.
And as vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy.
We just need to move past the failed policies that we have proven don't work.
We can't afford 4 more years of this.
Taxing on unrealized gains, and while it would not impact me at this point, I do worry that down the road it would be extended. It's just a new way of looking at things to say, we're going to tax what you don't have. That's a sore point, and it's a big deal. Is that something you think she firmly believes in?
I think it's part of the proposals of the campaign. Which is to try and find some way to get at this system of buy, borrow, die that allows the very wealthiest Americans to borrow against the unrealized gains in their portfolio.
Donald Trump, with what he's talking about dealing with Russia, if Russia were to start invading Europe, that would start World War III, by the way.
You know, there's a time for patience. And there's a time for impatience. That's not in Ecclesiastics, but
what he says is the opposite. It's just another lie. Like, how did we get here? Let's extinguish him for good.
We need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems.
And she said she supports changing the Senate filibuster rules in order to pass a bill codifying abortion rights.
I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe
and we need and get us to the point where 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom.
Wow. That is a collection of thoughts. Let's go to the panel. Rob Eno, as the guest, you get first dibs at this. What was the most sickening thing you just witnessed? And good luck narrowing that down to just one.
Well, the rest of them are just that I don't know what they said because they're dumb. But it's the first one. I'm still trying to process everything. But the first one with the high priestess.
Rob, let us inspire. Let us inspire each other with the inspiration that inspired us when we inspired ourselves and we were inspired by that inspiration.
And that inspiration allows me to be unburdened by what has been and will be
Indeed.
And may have been,
Yes.
unless I go to the high priestess of the Temple of Planned Parenthood, which I think was the one that was just, I mean, only the devil would tell you that, yes, I believe that these are children, but I felt no guilt in killing them, which is exactly what you said. So I think that is the, I mean, we all know that Planned Parenthood is the temple of the secular progressive religion, and she seems to be the high priestess. So that's what it looks like to me.
All right. Todd, what about you? What was the worst thing that you just witnessed and why?
Well, the worst, I think, might just be the beginning of the best. Because the worst is sitting inside wherever that room they were, writing their signature on missiles for Ukraine. This reverse Wakanda, as I've called it, but stick with me here, is fiction becoming reality? Because that's basically the beginning of the first Iron Man movie. You know, the explosion behind him as he delivers the missiles. Are we about to get superheroes? Because, hey, talk to me. Are we about to go full Avengers here? I mean, honestly, that was the beginning of the whole Avengers movie right there. So, I don't know. We might be onto something. Is Nick Fury?
Sounds like we're a lot closer to Ultron than the Avengers.
Yeah,
Todd,
Aaron, zoom in on that picture.
Culture.
Is Nick Fury somewhere just in the corner, looming?
Maybe.
There's hope.
I can go back.
Everything's stupid. Rob was right. No, the first time. Everything's stupid.
That's some solid ecclesiastics there, Todd.
Yes, thank you. So saith the ecclesiastics.
We've gone from 2 Corinthians to Ecclesiastics. Yes, we have. I'm sorry, Aaron. What, as you were putting this demonic roll call together, what was the thing that gave you the most pause?
It would have been the woman at the beginning. Is less woman, more like demon. That was the doctrine of demons that she is, as Rob just aptly put. But I was actually going to go to all of this talk about Trump in that clip from Jared Moskowitz, the congressman from Florida. That's from earlier this year, but I wanted to put it in there today just to draw that distinction. You know, Trump is going to start World War III when we really didn't have any major conflicts geopolitically when he was in office. I mean, that's just, to me, that's objective fact. We go from that to Democrats signing their names on large munitions for Ukraine. That's just, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. I am old enough to remember when I saw the hippie dippies marching against war in Afghanistan. I do remember that. I remember seeing them on the news. I'm like, oh, those unpatriotic freaks. Wow, man alive. Good grief. Now it's the Democrats who are the war hawks, apparently. At least now, anyway. I know there's some Republicans like Lindsey Graham who never looked at a war he didn't like. But that's probably the worst of the week. And I could have put more stuff in there. Truncated schedule this week. More stuff came out from Kamala's interview. First one-on-one interview. It's just the notion that that woman has a shot and we'll talk about this in a minute, but has a shot, seriously, to become president. Again, I keep making these generalizations because they're true. I keep saying that in and of itself is a sad commentary of this country. That might be the saddest one of all.
You killjoys. I think Black Panther's really going to reveal himself.
Let's get to the exit question. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the odds that there aren't several celebrities regretting what they did with then, or 2, Justin Bieber when he was a minor, and 10 being the odds Lindsey Graham is regretting what he hasn't been able to do with a fully grown Justin Bieber now. Rank this week's level of total depravity. Rob.
I normally give a 5 because I think it can get worse, but I'm going to give a 2 because I just didn't understand it. So it obviously can get worse.
3 out of the last 4 guests.
Wow.
3 out of the last 4 guests.
I mean, I thought I was just mainlining Spirit of Jezebel watching that entire montage. A 2. Aaron, your thoughts on only getting a 2, which means Rob thinks you just wasted your time doing that.
Yeah, 3 out of the last 4 guests have rated these Bleep Nefarious Says montages very, very low. So either we're getting desensitized or I'm losing my fastball, or the spirit of the age in an election season is just like, let's hold back the freak show for now. We'll get back to regular order on November 6th.
I don't know, man. I didn't see much holding back watching that myself. Todd, but what do you think?
10 is inevitable.
Nice. Aaron, what would you give your own?
I still think it's a 10 because of the woman at the beginning.
I totally agree there.
Maybe then back to a 5 then. Back to a 5 with the woman at the beginning. I'll give you that.
Okay. All right, let's get to issue 2. We have 40 days to go.
We are now approaching 5 weeks until the general election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. In the Real Clear Politics polling average, Harris leads by just 2 points. At the same point in 2020, Biden led Trump in the RCP average by 7 points. For the first time, Republicans are leading the Gallup Party ID tracker in the third quarter of a presidential election year. Kamala Harris had her first one-on-one interview this week with Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC.
The first one, just a fact check, because your opponent almost every day. Okay,
there's no such thing as a little job.
Okay, fair. Because your opponent almost every day seems to be talking about this. So I just want to ask you yes or no. At any point in your life, have you served 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, working out at McDonald's? Yes or no? That's it.
I have.
Okay, now the other job. But
it was not a small job. Like, I did the fries. I mean,
To be fair, Kamala has served a lot of McDonald's. John McDonald, Tom McDonald, Phil McDonald. Anyway, let's do this. Let's start with an elevator discussion and where everybody thinks we are 40 days to go. Aaron, I'll start with you. Where do you think we are 40 days to go?
So I think when we wake up on November 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever day this election season will be finally called on, I think we're going to look back and say there was no way they were going to let Donald Trump win, or there was no way Kamala could win. And I'm not saying that this is going to be a Reagan-style landslide. I'm just going to be saying the margins in the specific states, the states at play here. I'm going to put Wisconsin in there, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. I think the margins are going to be such that there's no way that Kamala Harris was going to win this, or there was no way that Donald Trump could win this, or that they were going to let him win this. Even if he does win,
I still hope you're right.
Even if he does win, they're still going to pull shenanigans as much as they possibly can all the way to January 6th. So I wax and wane from week to week. Whether I'm like, I wax and wane between those 2 perspectives. Just based on the actions of both campaigns, I think, oh man, and some of the polling as well, in some of the trend lines that you see from the polling, I think, man, this kind of, the lower races, Senate, congressional races notwithstanding, Trump looks pretty good. And then the next week, I'm like, there's no way they're going to let Trump win. I wax and wane between those perspectives.
Me too.
Which is why I'm just, so you can't disappoint me again. So you can't rip my heart out again. I'm not talking about anybody here, you. Just the system, you. I'm just defaulting, once again, to 2022 happened. And so I have no expectations above or better than what happened in 2022, which was a massive disappointment. So that's how I live my life.
I desperately think we need to win. My second most desirous result is what you just said either way. I think there needs to be a definitive verdict one way or the other. I think another razor close and how they come up with these votes and the polling is way off, blah, blah. I mean, I think it'll break us. I think it could absolutely break the right for sure. And the differences here are beyond stark. So we desperately need to win, in my opinion, number one, and then space bar. Regardless, the outcome, I think, needs to be decisive. So there is a clear path forward for us on the right moving forward one way or the other. Rob, where do you think we are 40 days out?
I mean, if you're to trust all of the swing state polls, if you're to trust the Gallup poll, that Gallup poll was a shock and a half.
Yes.
Yesterday. That was just out of left field. Was not expecting that. And I don't think the Democrats were expecting that, but I think they might have been, right? Steve, you and I have both advised candidates, right? And who's the candidate that normally doesn't want more debates? It's the one ahead, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Conventional wisdom says that the candidate that's ahead doesn't want more debates so that he or she can't screw it up. And I've been thinking of that a lot lately with the media harping on Donald Trump being a scaredy cat, being afraid, whatever they want to say he is, which are all words that you and I have used with underdogs and people that aren't the front runner to try and get a debate, right? Mm-hmm. I think they know that the American people are sick of the 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But I also go to what Aaron said. They can't let him win, right? They can't let him win. I mean, look what they've done to Eric Adams.
I mean, it's not like they're trying to kill him,
yesterday.
Rob. I mean, this is way over the top.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah. It's just
anyway.
insane.
Go ahead, Rob. Finish your point. Yeah, finish your point, Rob.
I go back to they can't win him. But looking at all of the data like we did in 2016, I don't see a way that he loses. I mean, if you're down in all these states by one percentage point in polling historically over polls for Democrats, I mean, I don't see how you lose. I do want it to be a stark break one way or the other, and I hope that some of our friends. I had a piece in the Blaze yesterday that was originally titled "An Open Letter to My Libertarian Trump-Hating Friends." It could have been my Ron DeSantis supporting Trump-hating friends in a lot of cases too. But, it goes to show this administration and Kamala Harris, they are tyrants. They put an 89-year-old woman in jail for praying in front of an abortion clinic. They put a guy in jail for a meme that we've all posted, joking about the election being the next day, or actually joking about being able to vote at home, which in 2020 became a reality. They put a person in jail for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid that if we don't stop this, Hillary Clinton said that she wants to put people that spread disinformation in jail. What's disinformation? Is disinformation that the genetic, the synthetic genetic material mRNA shots don't work? Am I going to go to jail for that? Am I going to be in a re-education camp? Am I going to be in a gulag? Are you going to be in a gulag? I mean, this is serious stuff. And I hope that my libertarian friends and my friends like me that supported Ron DeSantis in this primary season that just think Trump is a buffoon. I have friends and I have friends that were in the Trump administration, and during COVID, did you know that they wanted to stop the sacrament of the Eucharist in churches? The CDC in places wanted to stop the sacrament of the Eucharist.
We talked about that at the time, and then they tried to get you to do it over Zoom. Yeah, we talked about that at the time. Yeah.
And my friends use their veto in the administration to say, no, we're not going to do this. And then it didn't happen. There are people The Trump administration is the people that are there. Project 2025, for as much as the left is trying to make you think that it's all about abortion to get, especially my libertarian friends, it's not about abortion. It's about destroying root and branch the administrative state that makes it so it doesn't matter who we elect anyways. Right? That's what it's about, and that's what they're afraid about. They're scaring you with the abortion stuff and all of that stuff, making you look the other way. It's a big red herring. But, as long as people understand the consequences of this election and they don't let the media narratives just destroy their brains and they think about it and they think where they were 4 years ago, I don't see how he loses. And the polling seems to be...
So we're screwed then.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
Todd, go ahead.
There you go.
Go ahead, Todd.
So
Where
we're
do you think
screwed
we are?
then, as long as people, yeah, that's not happening. Listen, it's funny, all those horrible things that you mentioned as reasons why, actual citizens, people awake, paying attention, not prone to propaganda, would reject. Well, we're not that people. All those things continuing to happen are signs to me of how bad things are. Case in point, once again, just this week, Aaron's montage. In the live free or die state of New Hampshire, in your old neck of the woods there, Rob, the most they can muster against dudes and playing on the field against their daughters is two dads wearing pink wristbands. They get kicked out permanently, and not just from that game, but for the whole season. And apparently everybody else is just like, I guess that's how it is. Man, no one's pushing back against anything. That's why all these bad things keep happening. And now we know illegals are registered across the nation. More just found in Arizona. Arrest Katie Hobbs, by the way. We know that multiple mail-in ballots are being sent out to the same home in the same name. Folks, they aren't scared of anything. Of course they're going to try to cheat.
This is where I am optimistic. Is at this juncture in 2016, late September 2016, Trump was at 44.3% in the Real Clear Politics polling average against Hillary. He would finish 3 points better than that on Election Day. At this juncture in 2020, Trump was at 43% even in the RCP average. He finished almost 4 points better than that on Election Day. Trump is currently at 47.2% in the RCP average as of yesterday, which means despite this being his unprecedented, at least in the mass media era, his unprecedented third run for the presidency as a nominee, right? So there's an exhaustion factor there, even with the most likable of personas, of which he does not have that. He has, on top of that, a very polarizing personality. And then you throw in all the lawfare and everything else. Now they can legit call him, I guess, a convicted felon, and however legit you think that process was. Okay. But despite all of that, he has managed to actually become more popular than he was before. Now, of course, there's a ratio here. There's some ratio if he's more popular than he was before and their policies are more unpopular than they were before. That is buttressing up against his still negative favorables, right? So, we could argue, is it 70-30, 60-40, 50-50, 80-20, but there's some symbiotic ratio there where these two metrics complement each other. But nevertheless, whatever you think that ratio is, gentlemen, he is polling demonstrably better at this juncture than he was at the end of September in his last two races. So that leaves us then with one of two options. A, they're underpolling Trump again, as what Rob is intimating, which and Rob would have plenty of evidence that I've cited a million times, okay, with my own files that I keep on all of this to indicate there's a track record of that. Or you have to come to the conclusion that for the first time ever, after telling us his approval rating as a presidency was 40%, okay, and everything else, that for the first time ever, they're overpolling Trump. And then to get to that point, now for evidence of that, 2 days ago, the head of Rasmussen polling went after the New York Times for putting out a two pro-Trump sample. Nobody had that on their pack rate bingo card for 24, so here's your sign, okay? So that happened. Because why not? It's 2024. But if you're going to say that for the first time ever they're oversampling Trump, you got to come up with a reason. Because anybody that tells me, well, they're worried about their credibility. Oh, come on. No, they're not. These people would take vice grips, jaws of life, pry open our mouths, and then get a gay gangbang to urinate into it simultaneously and tell us it's raining. They don't care about any of that at all. That there's no care about credibility or anything of that nature. These are the people that lie to us and lie to us about absolutely everything. They don't suddenly have a conscience over polling. Okay, so that's not it. So we got to come up with another reason then why they would suddenly be oversampling Trump. But to me, if you look at the numbers, you have to conclude one of those two things. Thoughts on that before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and it's not to are they oversampling to get their base fired up because they know that their base isn't fired up for Kamala Harris to make I've got to go out because Trump really might win this thing. I mean, is that why they're doing it? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that for my entire lifetime Republicans have been underpolled. I mean, it's not just Trump; it's my entire lifetime in a general presidential election that Republicans have been underpolled, and it makes absolutely no sense.
Todd, what do you think?
Ban all polling.
Aaron, Aaron, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Aaron, go ahead.
I'm just trying to analyze everything through what narrative are they trying to set up. And what Rob just said is the only thing I can think of in terms of a narrative. They're trying to set up the narrative that Trump is in the lead. So
I think that's very possible. But you have to give me a reason why they would be, for the first time ever, undersampling Trump. And the fact they care about their credibility, I'm going to laugh right in your face if that's your answer.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for why, for the first time ever, they just all of a sudden have found God. I don't know.
Todd, what do you think?
The emoji, the hands raised, the shrug emoji,
Right.
that is my
Right.
posture towards this analysis.
This entire conversation, once again, is why we should ban all polling, because we're not even talking about the fundamentals. It's all about narrative, and that's not what polling is supposed to be. It's become propaganda under the guise of data. It's disgusting.
Correct.
That's what most of science is these days anyway.
Isn't that what most of virtually everything is these days? It's the furtherance of a narrative. It's because the social compact is broken. We're in an open, cold civil war now, and it's a worldview cage match, and two worldviews have entered, and only one's coming out. We're at the stage of the divorce now where you want it to go through, you don't want to reconcile, and you're going to start saying and doing the things to the other party that you would not say and do if you did. So let's get to the exit question. Who wins? And we won't hold you to this because a lot could happen down the stretch here. All right. But who wins as of today, the presidential election 39 days from now? Who do you think it is, Todd?
Kamala.
Give me a 1 to 10 confidence. 1 being shrug emoji, 10 being Lindsey Graham grinders account. Confident.
7.
Okay. Rob?
I'm going to go with Donald Trump, and it's going to be a 5 Lindsey Graham, Jimmy John's account. Not quite all of it.
Jimmy John's account. There's a million places we could take that one, and we will choose none of them. Okay, we'll just move on. All right. And by the way, Lindsay, it's Arby's that has the meats. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Go ahead, Aaron. Yes.
I'm at Kamala. I'm also at like a 7, just like Todd.
Okay.
I'm not totally black-pilled, or else I would have said 10.
Well, there is another variable here that there's just no point in discussing because we have no clue. It's untested, and it's the use of these third-party groups for get out the vote on the right. We don't have a clue what Elon's group or Turning Point USA. We just don't. We just don't know. They might do great. Hard to do worse than Operation Orca in 2012 and the GOP's anemic get out the vote effort. They might do great, but we don't know. We don't know. So we have no clue what the margin for error is where that is concerned. We just don't know. And we'll find out how they do up against the finely tuned machine of the Democratic Party come election day, week, eve, weeks, months, festival. All right. We'll come back. More Deace Group here in a moment.
Show.
right, back here on a Friday on the Steve Deace Show. We'll get back to the Deace Group in a moment. But first, I want to remind you about our great friends over at Preborn. They do so much to save the unborn, but then save the mamas too. All right. There's just something uniquely spiritually tragic when a mother murders her own child. And what that does to tarnish her own soul. And you often see at that point, a lot of women will just do it over and over again. And then a lot of women will also feel so much guilt and shame for it, they'll cover it up and they'll never be made whole, maybe ever again. And that's what Preborn wants to save. They want to save both the mama and her baby, right? And they do this person to person, and it starts with a confrontation. Mom is confronted with an ultrasound that proves to her that is not an unviable tissue mass or a glob of tissue. That is somebody else's heartbeat. That heartbeat does not belong to her, but is somebody else's. And then the majority of the time, mom will make the decision to be a mom and to choose life. But now they need to be there for her. Okay, first they're there for the baby. Now they need to be there for her. Does she have the support she needs? Does she need counseling? Does she need help finding a job, a car seat, diapers, formula, prenatal care, postnatal care, prenatal counseling, postnatal counseling? They do all this for the mom, and they do it all for free, even though none of this stuff is free. And that's where you and I come in. We can make a tax-deductible donation today in order to help fund this stuff so it stays free, and we can help save tens of thousands of more babies than we already have with our partnership here between the Blaze and Preborn. If you want to make a donation today, go to preborn.com/Steve. It'll be maybe the best $28 you've ever spent, because that's all an ultrasound cost that could save a life today. Preborn.com/Steve. Again, preborn.com/Steve. All right, let's welcome back in Rob Eno here, our colleague here on Blaze Media, as we continue on with your weekly look at the week that was, the Deace Group. Let's get to issue 3, your reaction to this American church video.
Circles are better than rows.
Circles are better than rows.
Life is better in circles than in rows.
Take your row and turn it into a circle.
Circle.
Circles. Being in circles.
In a circle. In circles versus rows.
Out of rows and into circles.
Circles are better than rows.
Circles.
Doesn't happen in rows. It happens in circles.
Circles are as important as rows.
We grow more in circles than we do in rows.
Circles.
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 So a lot of us remember that video that trended a few years ago of all the local TV outlets using the term danger to democracy. Rob, right? You used to be our media watchdog guy around here. You know what video I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, from Sinclair. Yeah.
Yes, and it's all of the local TV stations all saying the same thing, okay, about different stories in dramatically different markets around the country, dropping the same talking points. Just a devastating video that gets to the level of groupthink that goes on in our media, okay? This now reminds me of that, except it comes from the church, guys, which is supposed to, be set apart from such things, supposed to be timeless and transcendent as an institution. The only transcendent institution God ever made is the church. What a lot of you may not know is that there are websites where pastors can go to and buy their sermons. And more of your megachurches, and again, just to redefine this, a megachurch on this show is not a large church. It's a mentality, right? The day of Pentecost, 3,000 men get the Holy Spirit and start the Church of Jerusalem. And that doesn't count the women and children. That's a mega church by any American metric. All right. Spurgeon, the guy whose expositional work on Romans I'm using in the study, he presided over what would be known as mega churches in his time, the largest churches London ever saw in the 19th century. R.C. Sproul also would count for that as well. I mean, guy founded universities, sprawling campuses. That's Aaron's guide on his part of the study here. So it's not about the amount of people there. It's a mentality. It's the idea that these are customers, not sinners in search of grace, or that this is a place of comfort and encouragement, not a hospital for sinners, that we don't have elders. Okay, we have boards of directors, okay, et cetera, et cetera. And there are corporations, I won't even call them ministries, that create mixed sermons for these kinds of churches all over the country. And I will guarantee you that if you're in any suburb of America within the sound of my voice right now, there is a church in your suburb who either is doing this now or in the past has used one of these sermon services for their own message. So with that stated as the backdrop, Todd, let me start with you. What's your reaction to what I just said in lieu of what you just watched?
Well, oh, how I wish that a very pat "I'm Catholic" would be sufficient for this, but I've got to imagine that at times this is what my Protestant brothers feel like when they listen to Pope Francis bloviate about something just meandering incoherently. It's impossible to know which one of these folks up there, is well-intentioned and got this memo and said, this helps a little bit, and which one is purely selling snake oil. Mm-hmm. All I know is it's not a one-off. I'm confident that this is the experience of most people in the church on a regular basis. Just emotional and psychological noise, and it's basically the parable of where the seed falls. This is it's just very, very, very. It's falling either on the hard ground or just incredibly shallow earth, where even if it sprouts, it's just going to get scorched or choked by weeds. It's just got no shot.
Wow. That'll preach. Aaron, what say you?
I think, do you know the context of what this is, Steve? If I had to guess, it's probably the start of the new season for like small groups in churches. And so maybe they're urging people to get into small groups by saying, get out of the pews and sit around in their living room in a circle. I would guess that that's what they're talking about.
I would guess the same. Yeah.
Did you have any idea what this was talking about, Todd or Rob?
Absolutely not. I mean, I know that actually going back to church Catholic, so Todd will be happy. I went to confession last weekend and actually went to church for the first time in 30-something years.
Righteous.
But yeah,
wow.
But we have, yeah. So that's Matt Peterson's effect on me, by the way, here at the Blaze. But yeah, no, going to, I mean, the Catholic Church has the same readings every week across the world, right? That's what we do. So the whole idea of having the same message in the form of scripture, in the form of readings, is one thing. But I just don't understand the circle and the line. It's a weird thing to bring up, but it reminds me, this happens a lot, not just in the media, right? I mean, do you remember when all of a sudden the short lines at supermarkets didn't say 10 items or less? They all of a sudden started being grammatically correct, and it was 10 items or fewer. And there had to have been, like in Supermarket Digest, a thing that said you're being grammatically incorrect, use fewer, right? So it's this sort of thing. But I don't understand the circle and the line.
This gets back to the mentality. This gets back to the mentality that Steve was talking about.
Yeah.
What they're trying to communicate there is Hebrews 10:25. Don't neglect meeting together. That's basically what they're trying to. But the mentality is that I have to say this in a way that's really catchy and that's really cool, because the Holy Spirit just can't be relied upon to communicate God's word as effectively as I can. So now this is a trendy way to say Hebrews 10:25. That's basically what I heard from that video.
So to address what you mentioned, Rob, it's having scripture readings globally throughout the church. This is not that. This is catchphrases.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, I got it. That's what I said. Yeah.
This is this is a political consultant and activist. This is as if Rob Eno singularly consulted with every Republican candidate in America, and they all ran the same ad, and they all had the same commercial, and they all had the same talking points, regardless of what district they're in, what office they're running for, who the intended electorate is. That's essentially what this is.
Yes. And even if it's what you said, Aaron, which actually makes sense contextually. In terms of moving to small groups, the way you're talking to people and preparing them for those small groups, this is infantile.
Yes, it's comfort.
Yes.
You'll be more comfortable this way.
Yes, you're talking to children who it's going to be okay.
Yes.
It's like that one woman who's got popular like a couple months ago because she rips on Trump, by talking like a kindergarten teacher. That's what this sounds like. This is not a time to preach to children. It's a time to preach to grown women and say, what do you need to do? And it's not line up in lines or circles or whatever the hell it is.
I mean, the state of the American church is, we used to joke about this moralistic therapeutic deism. We've dropped the moralistic part. We're just at therapeutic deism. That's what that is.
Correct. And you know who you talk to children like this, but you talk to people that you think are customers like this. How can I help you? Oh, is that not what you would like? Well, have you thought about this one over here? This might be more, your speed. This might be more of what you're looking for. This is how you talk to customers. This is not. So the whole thing about seekers was always a lie. Seekers is to the church what investment is to politics. We need to invest in these departments, just means we need to raise taxes. Okay. It's a euphemism, complete lie, total scam. And that's what seekers is. Seekers is a lie. It really means we're a franchise. We have to treat people like they're customers, talk to them like they're customers. And they use a really warped view of Arminianism to justify this. That since people of their own free will choose whether or not to follow Christ or not, they take that to some just obscene extreme that Jacobus Arminius never intended, and take that to mean that therefore we couldn't possibly risk offending anybody, because then they might not choose Jesus and go to hell, and that would be our fault, that God left the whole thing up to us. That he's just completely helpless. If the church just can't get its head out of its rear end, then people go to hell, and God cannot possibly act outside of just how special of an institution and a franchise we are. When in reality, that is also a cover, okay, because what you're really concerned about are losing customers. And customers keep the lights on. The first church I ever formally joined, it was one of these churches. And we started having a massive drop in people who were seasoned saints, and they were going to other churches. And so the heads of this church, this is a rather large, 99% white suburban megachurch in Des Moines, Iowa. And we had one very successful black family move into the church, and they're going to stick out like a sore thumb in a 99% white church. All right. And they had been sent here. He had been transferred here out of L.A. by a prominent mobile phone company as their regional president VP. OK. And so they bring him in. He had come from Greg Laurie's church, one of the renowned evangelical ministers of the last 50 years. The movie Jesus Revolution is about him. Okay, that he's the main character of Jesus Revolution, and this guy came out of his church, and so the leaders of this church they go to this guy and they ask him, "Hey, we want to bring you on as a consultant. Can you help us find out why we, are doing a good job of bringing people in, but our retention is really low and giving is way down, and we're concerned about whether we can keep the place open or not?" Right? So they bring the guy in. He does a forensic audit of the church. He gets a hold of a lot of people who left, interviews. He treats it really seriously, like he would if his own company asked him to do this on their behalf. And he comes back and he gets in front of, we didn't have an elder board, we had a board of directors. Or if he finds out that our actual elder board hadn't met in like more than a year. Okay, so it was boards of directors who were just buddies of the guys that ran the church. And he gets up and he gives a presentation to these guys and points out, well, here's what's happening. You do a great job bringing new people in, but after they get converted and they want to grow in their faith, they feel stymied and stopped here. And so they go to other churches where they can continue to mature and grow in their faith. And those are the people that are most likely to give. All right, is the more mature you are in your faith, the more you're more likely to give to the church and surrender your finances to the Lord. So you guys, I would suggest what you guys need to do is really up the level of Bible preaching here, not on Sunday nights, where people have to come back again, okay, but during the messages on Sunday in corporate settings. I come from, Greg Laurie's church. He's been Calvary Chapel. That's the dawn of the seeker-friendly movement. We're hardcore Bible teachers. I've seen it being done. You guys can do the same thing. They thought he had great advice. They took it and implemented it, and the church exploded. Is that what you think happened?
No.
They fired him, kicked him out of the church for suggesting this. The church about a year or two later ended up having to be sold to another church, and it's out of business. That's what happened. And that is a metaphor for a lot of what has gone on in your Pottery Barn suburban megachurches here in the last generation. Let's get to our exit question here. 5 years from now, where do you think the American church will be? One word answer, because we got to go quick. Todd.
Confused.
Aaron.
Fumes.
Rob.
I don't know enough to give an answer. I'll say confused like Todd.
What is one thing the modern church has instituted you actually like? Quickly, Todd, how would you answer
Here's
that?
where I
for
do
a
say
topic?
I'm Catholic. That means absolutely nothing.
Aaron, go ahead.
The modern church?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay. Rob?
I'm going to say it's not the world with the flame on top of it from, the most famous mega pastor on TV. I won't even say his name to not get you angry.
Yeah, thank you. I will say I'm a fan of pop music. Music's mostly pretty good. Except the Jesus is my boyfriend stuff, as Aaron calls it. I don't like that stuff. All right, let's get to our predictions. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not done seeing football players run away from their teams because of this ridiculous, I can technically not break the rules by leaving now.
Rob, of course we're not, by the way. That's the easiest prediction you probably made. We might have one by the end of the week here.
All
Today's
of my
Friday.
football suggestions are easy. Just no one listens.
Rob?
Mine's a little bit more morbid, but I think that somebody at least one more person takes a shot at Trump before this thing's over.
Also morbid, but also a pretty easy prediction. Aaron?
We will hear a story. This is kind of in the vein of Todd's prediction. We will hear a story about how a star college football player at a blue blood program, the week before one of the biggest games of the year, whether that's Alabama, Georgia, don't they play this week?
This weekend, yeah.
Yeah, this weekend, or maybe it's Michigan, Ohio State, goes to their coaching staff and extorts money out of them before that game.
Because you need me right now. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, guys, remember Mike Gundy said in the middle of training camp, he told the players, got them all together, and he said he told them, have your agents and people stop calling me. We're done, Season's on. Time to get ready for the season now. Yeah. All right, my prediction is the new Joker movie, I think, is going to dramatically underperform its billion-dollar predecessor. Dramatically.
Good.
And I just think the audience for this is just not down to clown with a musical. Okay. That's what I think that's the biggest thing. It's just a musical. It's just not what it's going to be into.
It's really a musical?
It really is a full-fledged musical. It is. Yes. The Kaja Fall, basically, with the Joker and Harley Quinn. That's essentially what it is. Yeah. All right, we're out of here, Rob. Good to see you. Thank you, brother. And we will come back with Feedback Friday here next. All right, back here with Hour 2 here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Happy Friday to all of you. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. And feel free to let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And don't forget as well to check out our new YouTube page at Deace Show on YouTube. At Deace Show on YouTube is where you can find us there. Furthermore, if you're one of our beloved podcast listeners, thank you very much. You're a big part of our show's ongoing existence, maybe even, some would say, success. But they would have low standards. If that's you, thank you. Please show how much you love the show. Leave us a 5-star review. And thanks to all of you who have on your podcast platform of preference. You can also hit subscribe or follow if it's iTunes. And that way, every time we do a new show, it'll show up there right in your feed every single time. And we thank all of you for doing that for us, too. This part of the show brought to you by our friends over at First Liberty. You know, the American left, the spirit of the age, is saying that they want to save the Constitution. I don't think that means what you think it means. It does not. They've already shredded it. Okay, so that's no. It's the exact opposite is what they want to do. Things like stacking the courts. They even have folks running for Congress right now, openly running on admitting that's what they want. So our friends at First Liberty are mounting an army. All right. They're putting together a team. Okay. To go after the left and defend what's left of our constitutional republic. And I've seen these guys in action for years, and they're really good. Kelly Shackelford and his team are really good at what they do. You can join their fight right now and lend your name to say, hey, don't Venezuela my United States. All right. You can lend your name when you go to supremecoup.com/Steve. Supreme Coup, COUP. supremecoup.com/Steve. supremecoup.com/Steve. You can also learn how you can help to stop the spirit of the ages takeover of what's left of the Constitution in our courts at supremecoup.com/Steve. All right, gentlemen, you ready to get some Feedback Friday going?
Let's do it.
Yes.
All right, let's start here. As the election draws closer, I know that there are still a lot of people concerned that the Democrats will cheat again. I'm concerned about this also, so I have a story to tell you. In 2016, I lived in Etowah, North Carolina. It's a small town, not significant at all, not some place that a person might even be concerned about election fraud. I filled out my ballot, and fortunately, I'm in the habit of checking my ballot before I submit it, and this time was no different. I checked to make sure I didn't accidentally vote for someone that I didn't want to. Sure enough, I found that I had voted for Hillary instead of Trump. I changed it back to Trump and checked the rest of my ballot to make sure I had not made another stupid mistake, and they were all correct. Something told me, though, that I needed to check it again, so I did. Sure enough, my ballot had registered for Hillary again. Now I was becoming suspicious. I'm old, but I'm not that old. I changed it once again and checked the rest of my ballot again. I checked it a third time, and this time it had not changed, so I submitted my ballot. I reported this to the election judges that there was a machine that kept changing my ballot, and they said they would have it looked at. I wish that I had stayed long enough to make sure they did do that. Lesson learned. After the 2020 election, I wrote to the Secretary of State here in Colorado, where I live now, and told her of my concerns. Of course, she just blew me off and said that doesn't happen here, but she offered me no proof otherwise. What I would ask of you is to please warn your audience about these kinds of situations. If I had not been in the habit of checking my ballot, I would have never caught it. It only takes a few minutes to check your ballot before it is submitted, and maybe we can help to stop some of what is going on. That is from Cindy Carter. And I wanted to lead off with this because our theme this year is dominion, or control what we can control. Okay. And this would be an area where we can exercise some dominion. Let's make sure that my ballot says what I wanted it to say. Let's make sure that it filled out properly. Let's make sure that I show up to vote. Let's make sure I turned in my absentee ballot. There's got to be an inversion of ratio here for the amount of focus on things we cannot control in this arena compared to the things that we can. We cannot control whether or not these third-party turnout groups do a great job or not. We can't control that. We cannot control who Trump's going to poop post about at 3 a.m. on Truth Social to upset Karen America once more. We can't control any of that. But this is stuff that we can control. And there are more things within our purview of control than I think many of us realize. It just requires a willingness to give it a little more time, a willingness to say, hey, I have a question, a willingness to say, I'm not sure that's how this works, but, maybe I'm wrong. Can you walk me through this? Okay. A willingness to do something other than just to be mass compliant, but to instead be a citizen. And so thank you, Cindy, for your note to lead things off to remind us of that. You guys want to add anything to what I just said?
Nope.
No. Sufficient.
Okay. All right. Let's go here next. This one's a little long, but it's worth it, I think. That's why I put it in here. On our first date, my wife and I were discussing our families, and she informed me that her parents were divorced. This wasn't a major surprise given the state of the world today, but then she mentioned that the reason they got divorced was because after 20 years of marriage and having 4 children together, her father chose to inform her mother that he was gay. She told me that despite being divorced, her parents remained friends and her family still spends time together on holidays and all important events. And in the end, this was just not a deal breaker for me. I met her father and he seemed like a good man. And after realizing the true love I felt for her, I decided to spend the rest of my life with her and even spoke with him before asking her to marry me. We will celebrate our 4th wedding anniversary this year. There have been good years and bad, but for the most part, he has been a good father to her and is now a good grandfather to our 2-year-old daughter. My wife and I were both raised Catholic and continue to practice our faith with the support of her mother, who is very devout, and my own parents, who have been married for over 30 years. However, over the past year, her father has become more outspoken in his lack of faith and even made comments at our last Christmas gathering that he felt it was his duty to express his belief and even to try and make people doubt their faith. Most recently, he began a relationship with a new man who we found out was a 20-something-year-old illegal alien from Latin America. My father-in-law, by the way, is 59. My wife and I have struggled greatly with this new relationship of his. It is not due strictly to his homosexuality. We both believe that God loves everyone and that God hates the sin and not the sinner, but we are struggling with how exposure to this relationship will affect our daughter. At first, we decided simply to not expose her to it at all, since we were unsure how serious the relationship was and whether or not it would last. But after expressing our concerns to her father, he informed my wife that they had actually gotten married without telling anyone back in February. My wife does not want to fully remove her father from her life, and I support this decision, but the age difference between the two of them makes us both uncomfortable, and he has not done anything to address our concerns. In fact, he has said that he doesn't see how his relationships have any effect on our day-to-day lives. Personally, it concerns me why he would be attracted to someone who is so much younger than him and what that means about him as a person. We both love our families and consider them to be a great support system in our lives, but we do not know how to handle this situation. We want our daughter and any future children we have to grow up knowing and loving their grandfather, but do not know how to do this while also teaching them that this type of relationship is not okay. The fact that he chose to get married without sharing that information with any of his children has indicated to us he intends to remain in this relationship regardless of our feelings, and this leaves us in a position to simply hold our tongues and deal with each interaction as they come. I've been a fan of this show for many years, and any insight you guys may have, faith-based or otherwise, would be greatly appreciated. Please simply identify me as Concerned Father. Todd, I think as a Catholic, I'm going to let you take this one first. As a fellow Catholic, I should say to our emailer is what I meant. Go ahead.
Yikes. Listen, brother, there's just a lot of denial going on in this entire story, and I can tell by the fact that for even 1 second, let alone mentioning multiple times, you're emphasizing what's really unsettling is the age difference here. That's what's unsettling. So how about he remarries a 50-year-old guy, 70-year-old guy? He's a dude. He can't marry any of them. It has nothing to do with the age or if they're illegal or from Spain or whatever. It wouldn't be better for your daughter under any of those circumstances. Any of them. He's giving you bunches of reasons to protect your daughter from him, not to try to strain. Make him strain. Why does this always work this way? And what's Christian about demand? You have to do all the straining so your daughter can have a relationship with this reprobate? Make him strain. Make him miss her. Make him change because he wants to have a relationship. And I didn't say a damn single Catholic thing about that. Thank you for giving me first shot. But none of that has to do with it. I think that you guys are probably going to say something close to that because come on.
There is, can I add on this real quick?
Help yourself.
There's unevenly yoked, and then there is having a very heavy object, an anvil, tied around your neck, and that anvil is headed straight down to the deepest part of the ocean. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, man. That's what, I mean, there's unevenly yoked, and then there's this situation, which is way beyond that. I know that's really hard, and this is your father-in-law, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So there is, your wife's perspective here as well. That's going to be hard to get through. But yeah, it is disturbing, the age difference. But you add on to that the sexual perversion, just to begin with. I speaking personally for myself, I would not have anything to do with any individual, father-in-law or not, around my kids.
Okay. First, let me make sure I say this, and this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say. Brother, I'm very sorry. And Your situation sucks, man. And I'm really sorry to hear it. You didn't do anything wrong yet. And unfortunately, this is just emblematic of the era in which we live. This is the bitter harvest as a people we have wrought by letting this into the mainstream of the culture. And I have received, yours is one of the most egregious now, but I have received many a tale, at least that's somewhat derivative, if not from the same premise as yours, in my inbox numerous times the last few years. So you're not alone. And I'm sorry. Yeah, you know what's coming next. But your Lord warned you about this. And he told you, do not think I came to bring peace, but a sword. I will pit even the members of a man's own household against him. And I think Todd said something in his exasperation that if you let his tone rub you the wrong way, you missed the fact that what he said here is vitally important and fundamentally true. Notice that he's not wrestling with his conscience at all. In fact, he thought your Christmas gathering last year was his platform to plant seeds of doubt in your faith. I will just tell you right now, there is no way. I don't care if the guy's been married for 30 years to the same woman, and that woman is my mom. I'm never taking my kids back around anybody again who thinks their job is to plant seeds of doubt in the worldview that the Lord has entrusted me to instill in my family. And their behavioral status, relational status, none of it would be relevant. That's a hard no. No, do not ask me to respect you if you have no respect for me. That's not how this works. On any level whatsoever. That's a violation of boundaries. So already he is signaling to you that he fully intends to evangelize already. This idea, therefore, that he is ever going to leave what you think are the unseemly aspects of this relationship, and Todd is right again, it wouldn't matter if he was a peer. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, don't you guys teach that's a grave sin? You're putting your own eternal soul in peril by committing it?
Yes.
Okay. So is that only if there's no age gap? No?
It is not.
It is not. Okay. Yeah. When the Lord smited Sodom and Gomorrah, did he leave out the people that were in really strong monogamous same-sex relationships? Did he do that? He did not. No. But he's already signaling to you that he fully intends to evangelize. Fully intends. That he is going to take the accommodation that you have offered to him and abuse it. He has already signaled this. Another man has said he will impose on your dominion as the man of your home. He is not permitted to do that. Your wife is not married to him. She is married to you. That is not his child. It is yours. He can't do that unless you allow him. And if you allow him, one of two things will occur. The best case scenario of what will occur is a few times a year you're gonna risk letting him ruin the most special, some of the most special moments of your family, your child's childhood, Christmas, Thanksgiving, holidays, etc. That's the best case scenario of what will occur. That's the best case. The worst case is you'll be emailing me in 2 or 3 years saying, hey, you narrow-minded bigot, because bad company corrupts good character every single time. So you'll change your belief system in order to accommodate your family. You'll make them God. And you'll come up with some cockamamie theology that you won't even try on somebody like me because you know that I'll embarrass you with it in about 2.5 minutes or less. That God's revoiced. He's rethinking this. The church needs an update. No. You're going to hell. You're a heretic. That's what you'll do. I've seen that 1 million times. You will either Betamax this thing out and allow this reprobate, as Todd put it, to completely dominate your family's situation. And all you'll come away with from most of the holidays where he's present is anxiety that you got through it is your best case scenario. And the more likely scenario, since he's already telling you, I'm here to evangelize, is he's going to desecrate it. And then you allowed that to happen as the man of your home. You let that happen. Who cares if your wife can't handle it at first, your kid doesn't understand? God did not say you're the head of household unless your wife doesn't understand it. That's not what he said. Lead. It's what you're there for. And you know this, which is why you're emailing us. I think you're asking us for permission to do what instinctively you know you have to do. If the homosexuality issue is a tough pull in your family right now, then be thankful that by completely blowing past any boundaries whatsoever that would be just human respect. Who cares if he's in a gay relationship? Who cares if he's abstinent and an atheist? The idea that you would just let another man come into your family and say, I'm here to evangelize against what you're trying to instill in your child, you should never allow that. Ever. Ever. Doesn't matter what his sin of choice is. Never in a million years should that be permitted. God puts you there so that guys like him cannot do that to children like yours. No is the answer. Nope. Not happening. So if anything, he gave you an out by being an a-hole. Not just gay, but a douchebag. He gave you an out. You can focus on that one if you need to, if that's the easier argument to make. But I know it sucks that it falls on you, but you know what? It falls on you. You're the man. You're the husband. You're the father. So that's where the responsibility primarily lies. It starts with you. So you will either Betamax this out and you'll turn holidays into anything other than anxiety cesspools, if not just absolute memories of desecration that your kid and your future kids are going to pay bills you can't afford to therapists like my wife in about 10, 15 years. Or you'll join with them because you can't handle that. You don't want that to happen. So you'll let him sear your conscience. You'll prove the proverb that, and what Paul quotes later on in the New Testament, that bad company corrupts good character. And then you'll rail against the church. You'll be convinced that you figured out something that the last 2,000 years of orthodoxy has soundly rejected. And you'll be doing videos on YouTube that 47 people will see, thinking you've come up with some new angle of heresy that's been done by a million times by people better at it than you. That's the path forward. There's going to be difficulty. There's going to be confrontation. There's going to be unease. No matter which path you choose here, it sucks. I'm sorry, but it's the world in which we live. So it's just going to be a matter of, are you going to choose one that imperils your own soul in the same time? You can fear your wife. You can fear the family balance, or you can fear the one who can cast your soul into hell. Those are your options. What's the chain of command here? Again, I'm sorry, man. You don't deserve this. You know what, though? God didn't deserve all the times you sinned against him when he forgave them, too. Didn't deserve that. What did God do to deserve the amount of times you violated your covenant with him? The amount of times you shook your fist at him? What did he deserve? What did he do to deserve that? Gave you a soul, gave you a body, gave you a wife, gave you a kid, gave you a Lord. He didn't deserve any of the times that you violated his trust, that you went against his word. But he went to the cross for you nevertheless, man. Didn't have to do that either. He just wanted to. See where I'm going with this? You don't deserve this. But you need to go to the cross for your wife and your kid. And frankly, even maybe for your father-in-law. You never know. Might be your willingness to not comply, to hold firm, that ultimately leads him to repentance. You don't know. I don't know what'll happen if you do what we both know, and everyone within the sound of my voice knows, is the right thing. I don't know what'll happen. It is very possible east of Eden, the whole thing could blow up your marriage. All right? and you end up single. I can't sit here and tell you that's not possible. It is. All your church fathers, including the apostle that your church believes it's based on, were martyred or died alone. So this may not have a happy ending until you get to the other side of eternity. What I can promise you, though, I cannot promise you what the results will be if you do what God, you know God is calling you to do. That's why you contacted a show like this, because you know. I cannot tell you for sure it'll work out if you do what you and I both know God wants you to do. What I can tell you with certainty will happen is if you don't. Anywhere from risking your own eternal soul to being the reason your kids are seeing a therapist like my wife for the next 15, 20 years. That's what's going to happen. Devil plays for keeps, brother. I'm sorry. You guys want to add anything to what I just said?
No.
Man, I am sorry. I'm not just saying that either, man. I'm sorry.
Sin sucks.
Sin is. I was just going to say that, man. I know, man. I'm sorry. I don't envy you, bro. I don't.
But I don't envy him either, but we got to be honest about things in the beginning. You knew about this whole story in the beginning. Was there not a conversation about how sin plays out and how you're going to handle it? This is the thing, like not knowing what to do now. You should have known exactly what to do from the beginning. Had honest conversations about that. I understand why this is her dad. It's not as sinful for her to whatever daddy she remembers to do the best. This is the Superman thing. I will honor the man you once were. Try to maintain an individual relationship with him. If in your Catholicism, to try to help win him back, noble. But that's a different thing from now an innocent child totally being wired by what they're exposed to. And the fact that this is like what it's snowballing on you now. Again, we have to have serious conversations about faith all the way along the line. Waiting until it's suddenly you get mugged by reality. This is not a reality you by your own confession you were surprised by. That's what we just keep. This is the church writ large, brother. So you're not uniquely guilty of it. So I will absolutely save you from that. We are just not honest. The devout Catholicism of this family here, if we want to get Catholic, should have been like, pretty much, yeah, he walked out and he's gay, but other than that, pretty much just Normalville over here. Nothing was asked of this guy, and he knew all along he could get away with it. That's not Catholicism. That's not Christianity. There was no, we all collectively, brother, all of us have got to do better in terms of what we expect. Being shocked that this is the result of things by the church happens daily by a bunch of people, and it's unacceptable. This was the most obvious thing that was going to happen.
Because of what you just said, let me add something to what I said here in a moment. Let's talk first about our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You can make the switch today, and this is one element of the parallel economy that is fully available to us with one product we all need to use this modern era, our mobile phones. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today. If you do, they'll give you a free month of service. All right, when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve and use the offer code Steve, you'll get a customer service team that's U.S.-based, which means you'll be able to understand what they actually say. That's a plus and not a given in this day and age. You can get all the same network coverage and everything else emails from the big fellas that you get from the communist big fellas, and you don't have to give money to communists. You give it to Patriot Mobile instead. They reinvest it back into your values. I've seen that firsthand, instead of reinvesting in efforts to desecrate your values. All right, so make the switch today. You can keep your phone. You can upgrade your phone. You can switch your number, keep your number, whatever you want to do. Go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Get started with a free month of service today. patriotmobile.com/Steve with the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve, offer code Steve. Let me say one more thing. And I'm going to quote from one of my favorite theologians, to concerned father, who's paramount in your church's history as well, Augustine. There are many sheep without, many wolves within. Your father-in-law is a wolf. He concealed himself by your own story. He concealed his sin, as if you can. And then he has decided now that he's been let in. He will now devour the sheep. I will now evangelize on your holidays. I will now get you to doubt what you believe, so that you may now believe what I do. He is a wolf. In any other context, concerned father, would you let a wolf come at your family? In any other context? A wolf in animalistic form barrels through the front door. Are you not going to put yourself between that animal and your family? I would hope so. You're supposed to. You're commanded to, in fact. As Christ put himself in front of the wrath of God on our behalf. He's a wolf. He's now bearing fangs. He is demonstrating and displaying claws. He is telling you, Little Red Riding Hood, if you let me in, I'm going to eat everything in this house. Devour it all. Your job is to not let that happen. That is your job. When he told you, I'm now going to take your occasions and turn them into mine, he ceased being solely your father-in-law, and he became and pronounced himself and announced himself as a wolf. You should treat him now accordingly. Way too much petting of wolves in our families and churches today. Thinking we can domesticate wolves in our families and churches today. No, we cannot.
The Steve Deace Show.
All right, back here to finish it up on a Friday here on the Steve Deace Show on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Before we get to part two of Feedback Friday, it is brought to you by our friends over at Focus on the Family. Our last guy could definitely use some Focus on the Family podcast. In fact, you want to help your family stay on the narrow road, confront some of the consternating conundrums that the current cultural collapse, did I do enough alliteration there, anybody? The current cultural collapse is instigating. You need all the allies you can get. For decades, Focus on the Family has been one of those primary allies, and now they offer you the Focus on the Family podcast with Jim Daly, stuff that is applicable, relatable, and also biblical. If you want to listen to these each and every day, go to Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, D-A-D-A-L-Y, focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com. Again, head over there today. Visit focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com. All right, you guys ready to get back to some Feedback Friday?
Yes.
All All right, let's go here to Tanner. Tanner writes, for the last 24 years, I've been told that each presidential election is the most important election of my lifetime. And if I don't vote Republican, our country will be doomed. I believe that many who say this are sincere, and most of their concerns are valid. However, each time I have also been told that even though the Republican candidate does not meet my standards, I must vote for him or all is lost. As a result, I've lowered my standards to the greater good and voted for candidates who did not meet my standards. Now, I am again being told that I am facing the most important election of my lifetime. That is very possibly true. Yet President Trump is pro-choice on some level. That is also true. Has no regrets about his handling of COVID. That is mostly true. And I say mostly because he's brought on RFK Jr. He met with our friends at We the Patriots USA, and they had some good conversations. But I would still say that that is mostly true. And will continue to increase the debt, which my children and grandchildren will suffer for. That is unquestionably true. But that's not going to be unquestionably true about any Republican you could vote for, except maybe Chip Roy and Thomas Massie. For these and other reasons, he falls below my standards. So my question is this: where is the line? At what point do I finally say I cannot lower my standards any further, even if this is the most important election in world history? Is it when the candidate agrees with abortion up until birth? Is it when he has shut the country down and handed the government over to the experts for the third time? How depraved must he be before I say enough? Or must I support the Republican candidate as long as he loves the country and has good foreign policy, despite how liberal or progressive he may be otherwise? I know this is not a simple answer. No candidate is going to meet all or most of my standards. I also know that all of my standards have eternal implications. As such, there are times that I should vote for someone who may have different ideas about subjects such as fiscal policy. I also know that we are in serious danger from the left. I have no doubt that a Harris presidency would be awful for the country. I understand the desire to vote for the man who will be exponentially better. However, abortion, the misuse of power during COVID, and Trump's character require me to decide my values or between my values and the necessity of defeating the Democrats. As the Republicans continue to creep to the left, this conundrum will get worse. Agreed. So at what point of depravity and moral failing in a candidate do we say no more? I fear that if we don't know where that line is, we are simply taking a slower track to destruction, as we will eventually compromise everything. So let me say, first and foremost, Tanner, I agree with the premise of what you wrote and the conclusion. I also greatly admire and respect the way you are working this thing out and doing the moral, philosophical math. And as long as you do that, even if you come to a different conclusion than me, okay? I mean, look at our own show makeup, okay? If I thought that Rome was the true church, I'd go to Mass with Todd. I don't think that. Okay? So that is a very fundamental disagreement that Todd and I have. One that has spawned wars in the last 500 years. Literal wars. Like literal people have died over this. Okay? Over this disagreement. But when we look at the issues of the day as believers, and we work through the process for the decisions that we make, him and I are doing the same math. We may come to a different answer at the end of the equation at times, but we're doing the same math. And as long as we're doing the same math, there's going to be plenty of common ground, not to mention trust on a personal level that this person's not trying to get over on me. This person's not being a deceiver. This person's not gaslighting me. All right. This is a sincere person who just on this point disagrees. Then there's plenty of areas overall where we can agree. For months on this show, I was the only one who was certain I was going to vote for Trump. I don't think the show suffered at all. So I appreciate the level of depth of critical thinking here. You know, we used to say on our show, one of our original catchphrases on the show is we're not trying to win an argument, we're trying to start one. All right, Tanner, I started one with you. You're working your way through it. You may come to a different conclusion than me. I got nothing but salutes, man. I agree with it. More people think like this, even if they come to different conclusions. I would take more people thinking like this, coming to different conclusions than me, than more people not thinking at all and instinctively and emotionally and reflexively coming to agreement with me. We're going to have a much better, bigger, broader future as a people with the former than the latter. So you have, and to this day, you contact me and say, I just can't get there because of the things Tanner mentioned. No one would get an argument from me. But I need you guys to understand the amount of people not voting for Trump who give me the notes like Tanner compared to the other stuff I see, guys, it's not even freaking close. And a lot of it just boils down to, I'm pissed my guy DeSantis didn't win the primary, and I think it'd be better off for DeSantis 28 if Trump 24 lost. Let's just be honest about that. And I'm so convinced of it, I'm going to totally disregard the fact my guy DeSantis is out there at times working harder on the campaign trail for Trump than Trump is. Raising more money for Trump than Trump is. Messaging better for Trump than Trump is. Taking the entire state of Florida government and investigating the assassination attempts against Trump that some of you think Trump staged because you've let him rot your brain. And you're not any different than the people that are posting, that are buying Trump digital trading cards that you're mocking and hems of garment and have Jesus anointing Trump on the shoulder. You're the same people as them. You're not different. They're just heads on the coin and your tails. Now, Tanner, what you're offering is way different than any of that. Trump made all the mistakes you're talking about. I tried my best to hold him accountable during the primary process. The rest of the country didn't agree with me. My own state didn't agree with me for the first time. Now, I've decided the differences between Kamala Harris and me, especially, and Kamala Harris and Trump secondarily, are so vast that the time of that accountability ended with the primary now, and now it is the turn to hold the left accountable for what they would like to have done and what they would even further like to do. If you can't get there, fine. If you and I were sitting down talking about this and you said, well, tell me why you disagree, I would point out to you, Trump did do more things in his presidency than just screw up during COVID. The only reason you have the best pro-life bill in the country in Florida is because Trump appointed the justices that overturned Roe. Well, Steve, he seems to back away from it. Trump seems to do a lot of crap. It is every bit as likely tomorrow that Trump will go full bore pro-choice as it is he'll become full bore abolitionist. And that's not even an exaggeration. It's life with Trump. It's life with Samson as your judge. It's where we are. But at least there's a reason the Philistines are trying to kill Samson, even though he frequents their whorehouses. There's a reason why they're trying to kill him. So even though he may have some of the same predilections and peccadillos that they do, there's a reason why they're trying to shoot our Samson now. There was a Trump presidency before 2020. Things were cheaper. The economy was better. The world was safer. The border was more secure. I kind of think those are fundamental things. There's a lot of people that want to pretend, if you're a Trump grifter, you want to pretend he was never president so that you don't have to wrestle with what the Tanners of the world are rightly pointing out about his failures that cost him his presidency. But then there's another group of people that want to not pretend that Trump was president before, except for he was only president during 2020. Never president before that. Nothing happened before that. And even as bad as his 2020 was, and I think it's one of the worst years any president has literally ever had, he still signed the Abraham Accords that year that should have won him a Nobel Peace Prize, frankly. That's how I would counter. If you in the end come back to me and say, I just saw too much suffering and he's unrepentant, I can't get there, then I got nothing for you other than a salute. And there's going to be 75 other battles that will happen immediately where you and I are going to be on the same side. And I look forward to fighting alongside you then. But the amount of people that don't want to vote for Trump making Tanner's argument compared to, I think I've just come up with some secret strategy for my guy, it's just not even close. And we don't have time for that kind of foolishness. There's always time for what Tanner's doing here. There's always time for, let me make sure I'm following the Lord's will. Always time for that. Always. Never not a time for that. What I'm seeing is, for every Tanner out there that's hesitant about it, there's the other 9 out of 10 have their own selfish, stupid reasons and naive reasons for it. And that I have no time for. Todd and Aaron, would you like to add to that at all?
Simplify the issue. On abortion, when the emotional hijacking of rape, incest, and health and mother come along, and when I ultimately came up with, I don't think I'm a genius about this, but I had never heard anybody do this before. And the math, like I said, when you see things that you can't unsee, pull these people aside, dismember the argument in front of them by saying, okay, you believe that, That's your most important thing by your own estimation, your own words. Okay, you and I are king and queen for the day. You get those. Even though I don't believe that, you get those. You give me all the rest. And the answer is always going to be no. We want to kill all the babies. Okay? And then you clear that up and you take that off the table. Or at least everybody knows they're lying. Clean this up too. A lot of you voters, folks, you honestly, the way as Christians, you act like you going into the voting booth is the same thing as like walking into the holy of the holies. It's not. Stop that. You're making this too hard. Do this. You and me are king and queen for the day thing. President Trump, I'm a Christian. I'm against abortion. I don't believe the kid should be trans. I believe in closed borders. Hey, some of those things he's had a good record on. Some of the things he's been kind of a failure on. But be honest with yourself about the kind of conversation you're going to have with that man, who's a lot closer to a king. And then have the conversation you're going to have with Kamala. Just be honest about that. The voting booth, you're not walking into the Holy of Holies. You're making this way too muddy, way too unclear. Keep it simple. All right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and render unto God what is God's.
Let me just say, though, to be empathetic, and I don't say that often, and all three of us are going to amen this, okay? Trump makes it way harder to do what Todd is articulating than it should be. Okay. He makes it, he just makes everything way harder than he always does.
Well, you were
always
the guy,
makes it way harder than it should
be. To your point,
be.
you were the guy who was with him longer. I was saying this is the least important election of our lifetime, not because I didn't believe what I just said about what Trump would say in that conversation, but in the, months out, it was just like, where's the there? What have you learned? Can you step up? You have to be better than this. But I always knew the answer to the question I just posed was also the same. I just didn't feel I'm not gonna get a point you've made excellently many times before. I shouldn't have to work harder than you on this, so I wasn't going to then. And then he got shot at, and I said, okay, bullets are flying. I'm in. But don't make it, you're not everybody. Honestly, we keep getting these responses, and I think a lot of people are acting like this. My soul, my immortal soul is no. Maybe his is, yours isn't. Are you going to have more options as a Christian?
If you're in a war and the guy and the same army is firing on you and the guy next to you.
Yeah.
Okay. And the guy next to you is wearing a pentagram and you're wearing a cross. Okay. Even though you're wearing the same uniform. Okay. And he's got some tattoos that you're thinking ain't of this world, and they're from down south rather than from up high. Okay, right? All right. And you're thinking, I certainly don't want that kid. No, I got some questions. But at that moment right there, when your mutual enemy is firing on you, is that the moment that you look over at that guy and say, "Hey, about that pentagram"? No, man, you're just firing back. All right, you're just firing. How many guys were spirit-filled believers that got off of every one of those boats on June 6, 1944. I mean, a lot of them were. Not every single one of them were, though, not by a long shot. How many just did it because they were ruffians and they had to join the military to stay out of prison? See what I'm saying? How many did it because they were ruffians and thought, hey, I like killing people. This is a way for me to do it without having to go to prison, right? You don't know everybody's motivations and everything all the time, okay? That's kind of, Todd, what you're alluding to here a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do not fault the math that he laid out at all. I don't. At the same time, I don't want to call it preening. Don't take it as condescending. In 2016, it would have been more understandable to say, you know what, this violates my conscience. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Conscience arguments when it comes to voting, I think, held more weight back in 2016 because we didn't know, at least from my vantage point. Other people would have said, no, we were way past the point of no return in 2016. But from my vantage point, the social compact hadn't fully been broken yet. Okay? So you're really kind of making some weighted decisions here, weighty decisions about, hey, what is the direction of this party? What's the direction of this country? Things of that. It's just all out war now. And that was true before they started shooting at Trump, and it is now. The difference is some people like me just needed to see that and be reminded of it up close and personal. And when we say up close, it was about 3 millimeters away, up close. So that's where I came down. It was never really an endorsement of Donald Trump. It was more along the lines of time's a lot closer to being running out than I thought it was.
Amen to what both of you said there. But I also want to amen again to Tanner's conclusion, because we are in a godless era. We are approaching the point where we're going to have mass disagreement among believers about whether we can continue to align with people because of what will be asked of us to overlook. Now, I don't think we're at that point yet. If I did, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing for Trump. But I also don't think we're that far away, guys. I mean, I really don't think we're as far away as people think. And that will have an even more splintering effect within the church. Okay, I mean, I would just tell you privately, I had a conversation with a dear friend of mine, a name a lot of you would know, been on our show before, and we were discussing this as mutual believers. This, and I discussed my fear that we're approaching the point where I'll be asked to disobey my Lord too much to fight back against those who are fighting against my Lord. And he said, not me. I'm in all the way to the end. No matter what, we have to stop these people. And I could just, him and I agree on like everything else. But even where we're like, yeah, I don't know. That's coming. Without revival, that is absolutely coming. Tanner's right about that. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Hope to see you on Monday. I'll be here again. Until then, Romans 8:28.